Okay, now we're going to talk about overlapping action and follow through. Overlapping action basically is, all the parts of a character or an object aren't going to arrive at the same time. So think about, like a jump in the air. As the character bends down, the arms are going to come up, right? And as the character jumps up, the arms are going to come down. So it's basically breaking up the different parts of the body and giving them different timings. That's really probably the best way to describe it. Here we've got just like this very simple rig. It can be a tail or a whip. And what we're going to do is basically add some keyframes to it. One here. We're going to go here. We go back here, middle mouse click and drag to copy, and S to save the key. So basically, it's now a copy. We're going to go into the graph editor, and you can see I have basically post-infinity cycle on and pre-infinity cycle on, and I have view infinity checked on, so you can see the curves as it cycles. Okay. All right, so now we've got the root of the tail swaying back and forth. Okay. Now we're going to set some keyframes on all the controllers. So we left it like this. Obviously, the tail is going to look really stiff and boring, right? So we don't want the tail, these parts of the tail, to arrive in the same pose. So as the root starts to move this way, we want these controls to be rotating back to where they were. And see how they're starting to curve there. And then at the other keyframe here, where the root is, we're going to set that back to 0. And then as the root starts to rotate back, we're going to start to rotate these back as well. So now, when we play this, you can see that it's got more flexibility and is looking a lot more like a tail should look. So basically you have, this is your main root. That's the driving root force, right? And as we move down, you can see that these other sections are following that path. So that doesn't get to that straight pose until there. So what we'd really want to do here on these two frames is just kind of drag these still a little bit more to have that delay, and then we're going to middle mouse click and S to save that here. Then you're really going to get that. And then the same thing here, center, we're going to drag these behind because they're going to not be at the same angle of rotation as this, because this is going to be the leading joint. So now when we play it back, you're going to see, it has a nice soft and flexible feel to that tail. All right, and the same thing goes with rotations as well, okay? Let's select all these. We're going to zero this out. We're going to delete these other keyframes. And the same thing of this tail, if it slides over, let's reposition this here. All right, we're going to, whoops, didn't want to do that. All right, here we go. And we're going to have this slide here. Set a key. So now it's going to, all right, we're going to want to turn off cycles, curve, post-infinity, constant, pre-infinity, constant. Oh, that's what I just did. All right, post-infinity, constant. All right, so now it's behaving the way it should be behaving. Okay, so now it's behaving the way it should be behaving. So what we're going to want to do here is I'm going to have this take off quickly. Let's see, this is translate C. I'm going to have it take off pretty quick. And then this is going to flatten out and it's going to ease into that pose. Okay. So now we would take these controllers here. Let's save that there. Now that we have got keyframes and everything. All right, so now this is the main force. So as that force takes off, these aren't going to be in the same orientation with it. They're going to drag behind. So as this thing starts to take off, they're going to drag behind. And then as it slows up, what's going to happen is, we're going to have to give it a few more frames, is those things are actually going to, let me constant curve on that. Okay, these are actually going to overshoot it, and then they're going to come back. Now if we look at this, you can see how it's overshooting, or it's they're dragging behind, and then they start to catch up and then overshoot a little bit. Overshoots way too much. So let's just kind of tone that down. And I think even here, it's still going to have a little rotation to it. And this one too is actually going to rotate as well back. And again, this is feeling a little bit too much. Do a nice little tiny bit. And we're going to add an in between there. Now you're getting that drag. These objects are kind of catching up and overshooting a little bit. And then you could do the same thing, get a little overshoot in this as well. Not much, just a little. And middle mouse click. And there. So what we want this to be ahead of the other one. So I am going to remove a keyframe. Again, I have that shortcut already set up to remove it. And there you've got a little drag and a little overshoot. And see these pieces aren't ending until a frame later. And so each piece is behind the other. And even this one, we can add an in between here. Wrong spot. So even that one is the very last. And then We should also offset these as well. I'm going to offset this twice. I'm going to add there. So now everything's not happening on the exact same frame. The actions are overlapping one another. Alrighty. So that's a very basic rundown of overlapping action. And then we're going to move on to more of a complex example on our rig. So let's jump over to that.